Welcome. Step into the Mindora Lab. On this podcast, we will be discussing the practices, research, science, and technology surrounding alternative medicine, where listeners will gain valuable insight and information with every episode. Just as a reminder, the Mindora Lab podcast is for educational and informational purposes solely. All subjects discussed on this podcast should not be construed as medical or legal advice. You should always seek out help from a professional provider. Thank you. All right. Good morning. Thank you for being here, Joe Carreiro. Absolutely honor and privilege to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and be here today.
Definitely my pleasure. Dorian, it's from the first times that we kind of connected and talked, I've been eager to have a more in-depth conversation, and I'm glad that we didn't give ourselves too much time before we really got rolling here, because we already were starting to dig into our past and our history and what brought us here. So it's good to connect with you too, man.
The connection that we had at MJ BizCon was awesome because it was genuine. I was like, oh shit, this is cool. Like, I actually get to meet someone in person that I'm talking to on LinkedIn. And
for as much shit as people talk about MJ BizCon, and I get it. Like, you look around and you're just like, a lot. I do it a lot. I'm like, ugh, and I love the industry, but it does kind of like in Vegas combined with that. We were talking about that a little bit. Like, MJ BizCon does kind of bring out like the weirdest, most cheesy, fake elements of the industry, but it also is the place every single year that I meet the people that I've been like connecting and working with and like humming with for like the last year.
Right.
And it means so much. There's no like bullshit about that. There is no lack of anything but like true connection and authentic like support for each other, and usually business. Like, usually it's like, oh, let's lock that forward. Even if it's just collaborative exchange, I find that space to be important for our business and myself personally every single year. And you were definitely a part of that, right? Like, you rolled in, I was like, ah, and it made me all that much more excited to talk to you today. Yeah. And it's a Saturday here, right? Like, I got 4 kids, but I'm like, okay, go have fun with dad right now, because I'm gonna talk with Dorian for a little while. I dig it.
I could definitely attest to that. The first time I went to MJ BizCon was in 2021, and I was working with a company at that time, looking for brand new extraction equipment, shaking hands, basically getting the lay of the land, because I didn't know what to expect, right? Coming back home, and I'm like, oh, hey parents, I work in the cannabis industry, and I'm doing high level shit right now.
It's just insane, like, because the industry is so nascent too. Like, it's so young. And it has so much to evolve yet still. I mean, giving all credibility, and like, it's a millennia old relationship that we have with the plant itself. But like, this quote unquote industry, it's something. It's a baby. It's like nobody's got their shit figured out. We're all just like shooting in the dark to some degree. Every step we take forward is a good step. Let's all give ourselves credit for that. Absolutely. But like, it's definitely like one of these spaces where we are like forming great change. Like you just said, you went to your parents and you're like, I'm doing big shit. You weren't full of it, because you were making decisions that probably operational for your organization were way ahead of like where you are. If you were like working in, the soap industry, like you went to work for Procter and Gamble, you wouldn't be able to be making those same decisions, right? No. It would be some 55-year-old dude that's been doing it and was on the line for 10 years first. But this industry is like open. It's open if you are smart, if you are deliberate about the way you learn, like you did. You were like, I'm going to go and I got to figure out what this industry is about. If you're deliberate about like really trying to understand the way it is working and the way it's probably going to evolve to work, and I can't say how important that is enough. Like, it's so cool how much contribution you can make, even as a really young person.
Yeah.
Like, and you get to go back to your mom and dad and be like, and I feel that, like, and I'm not the youngest person in the industry, but I'm pretty new to the industry,
Right.
right? Like, if you're not in here for 5-7 years, I'm only in for a few years.
Yeah. No.
It's when you hit 10 now that you're like, oh, power, you know.
Yeah. I'm
3 years, 4 years, you're still a baby.
Yeah, no, 4 years about, and then I took my chances going into the supplement industry and seeing what that world was about. And there's still the same amount of problems that you have to solve when you get into another industry that involves any type of raw materials that you're applying technology and science to. So, I saw both sides of it, and I was like, oh, I've seen that already. I've seen that in cannabis side, but then also
Isn't that
nutraceutical.
funny that you took experiences from the cannabis industry to the nutraceuticals industry? I don't know if you know, like, I have my background applies to the nutraceuticals industry
Ah,
a little
okay.
bit.
Here we go.
Yeah. And so a lot of the lessons that I learned from definitely from pharma space,
Hmm.
but the nutraceutical space is, paralleled, right up with the pharmaceutical nutraceutical space are, brothers, sisters, if you will, spaces.
Hmm.
And specifically, like, what I do is bring cool industry technology
Yeah.
to people like that and say, like, how do you test your raw materials?
Right.
That's what I always did, right, Dorian?
Yeah.
So, like, that space, you went that way and I came the other way, understanding the challenges of that space. I was in the pharmaceutical nutraceutical space saying, hey, here's this really cool little technology,
Hmm.
loving the plant. Like, it was always a part of my life, and
Right.
seeing the new cannabis industry come up and then going, can we make this thing work for it? Can we make all these tools that I have access to,
Right.
mostly spectroscopy based tools,
Hmm.
Raman, near infrared, FTIR, with companies like Thermo Fisher and Shimadzu. Those are the kind of companies I've worked for before. And
Okay.
say, like,
Yeah. So
how do we do that? How do we test weed? And that's kind of where I ended up with Light Lab.
before we get into all of that, because those are big names, can you tell the audience where you're from and where you grew up?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm just like, I jump right in because
No.
it's so crazy to hear that you went from the nutraceutical industry, man. That's super cool.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I'm Jill Carreiro. It's super cool to just jump right into this conversation with you. Obviously, you can't
Yeah.
stop me now. I'm from I'm from I should have smoked more this morning. I'm from Berkeley, Massachusetts. I grew up on the South Shore of
Hmm.
Massachusetts, but I spent a huge chunk of my life in Arizona.
Okay.
Like, so I went to high school and I went to Arizona State University,
Ah, yes.
where I got a bioengineering degree.
Fuck yeah.
So I'm an engineer who's done a lot of chemistry and biology, and, like, that's the things I like, but obviously I talk too much. So I've been working in sales for a very long time.
And when you were in college, did you ever think about taking steps to get into some field that was like related to alternative medicine, or were you just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna get my bioengineering degree, and I'm gonna go into research, or what was the track?
No, definitely was always, well, I mean, so my first goals were something that was pretty revolutionary, which is
Okay.
an idea called osteointegration, right? As a bioengineer. So I was always like a let's push the envelope type of thinker. And osteointegration, the Europeans are really at the head of this.
Hmm.
Basically is the idea that we can integrate a lot of non biological materials through
Uh-huh.
biological net pathways with our own bone, so that specifically, like, prosthetics
Yeah.
are more directly integrated with our bodies, right?
Ah.
Because most of the challenges that come, because I worked in prosthetics and orthotics, and that's where I was headed.
Hmm.
I thought my thought and the biggest challenge to a lot of prosthetics patients
Yeah.
is kind of the socket to stump is what they call that. Issues like it hurts, right? And
Right.
that's a big part. You just manage that all the time. Such a big part of being an amputee is managing the health of where you were amputated. And if there was a path to directly integrate that, you wouldn't have that challenge. And so that's right from the beginning. I was kind of thinking like, whoa, can we do that? But then no, I transitioned into, again, a space where I was able to like help non-scientific people get nerdy. That's what I got really cool at. Like I was working in big pharma, but it wasn't with the R&D folks.
Okay.
It was more with the people that were in like the warehouse, the people that were kind of lower on the totem pole scientifically,
Right.
but they had such value if we were able to give them a technology that was a little bit more simplified.
Okay.
That applied the same, like, oh, that's the thing that they use in the lab.
Right.
But here we just made the algorithm, we embedded this awesome algorithm. We've made it so that you can use it for identification testing for raw materials. That was really the big thing that I worked on for like 10 years around that was like, how do you make that, doable by a guy that usually runs a forklift? Right. That's what it was. So, but it wasn't really focused on alternative medicine. But I always believed in alternative medicine, right? Like since not necessarily high school, right? I never consumed cannabis in high school, but in college, I always used cannabis as like I worked my ass off, man. I worked all the way through college, 1 or 2 jobs. I was an engineer. I got 2 degrees while I was there. Like I worked hard, and cannabis was always like my great levitator. It was all and really the thing that I used for perspective and gratitude. And so I knew the power. I always knew. And I working in big pharma or associated big pharma, I was like, no, I knew I was like associated to the evil. Totally like got it. Oh, I'm helping these guys at least be more efficient about like making safer drugs. I knew that. Like what I was doing was like making them test more shit because it was allowing the warehouse guy to do it. But it was always still associated with white powder drugs that have Americans suffering. And I knew that cannabis was much better. And so as soon as I saw this industry, like kind of not even having the needs yet, they still don't even get completely like the needs set that's coming.
Yeah.
Being even a Schedule 3 drug, like we're going to get into that. But like the shift in how we have to behave, I'm like, oh, they're going to need something like what I do now. And so I started poking at like, can we use the thing that I was selling, the things that I was working with to solve the cannabis problem? I was like toasting a ton of weed all the time with the tools that I was using were laser based. And so I was like literally lasering cannabis to try to figure out if this would work with a bunch of awesome scientists.
So it's interesting that you bring up that you were testing raw materials for the orthotics and prosthetics industry, because I used to work for an orthopedic surgeon's office, and they would always come in with, getting certain replacements and then having allergies to those specific metals and whatnot. And, diving deeper into that industry, uh, it was nuts to see that the FDA would be able to push forward some of these replacements that knowingly people were allergic to and were being put into people's bodies. So
there's a certain level of acceptability, right? Like, what percentage and how bad do they get injured?
Yeah,
crazy.
It's wild because medicine is always evolving and always changing, and you don't know the ramifications until later down the road after prolonged use with a population and then seeing how they react to it. So the fact that you're already getting into that field of testing raw materials before it's integrated biologically, that's fascinating.
It's part of, I mean, the industries, both pharmaceutical, biopharma, and less on like the devices industry, have to do certain levels of like incoming inspection. They do outbound inspection to certain levels as well, but it's really crazy actually how when we were all, I'm 43, this was about 15 years ago. I'm trying to think what year it was. It was probably about like 2010. The United States made a shift in their laws to align with pretty much the rest of the world. And here's what the rest of the world was doing. You make a drug in the rest of the world, and you buy 100 barrels of white powder from China to make that drug. That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
You're combining this white powder with that white powder with this and that, and you mix it all. That's drug making 101, people. With, you know, obviously chemistry stuff happening there, but you're starting with raw materials that you are buying from the other side of the world. That is just the way it works. The rest of the world required what was called 100% raw materials identification inspection, which means of 100 barrels, if you're making a drug in Germany, if you're making a drug in France, Ecuador, Zimbabwe, anywhere, you would open every barrel, make sure that that company sent you what you bought before you just dumped it into the container, right? Before you started making our Tylenol.
Yeah.
The United States at that time, before then, was one of like 4 countries in the entire world that didn't require 100% RMID. They required what was called square root of n plus 1. So essentially for 100, it would be a square root of 100, so 10, plus 1. So they'd pick 11 barrels randomly, and this is Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. Every single U.S. operator that was making every drug would take that sampling and test those and say, okay, we're good to go. Not knowing what the other 89, but those 89 would go right in there too, baby. Yeah, dump them all in, mix them up with drug. And this was a huge shift that happened, right? Like for the pharma industry, and that is what drove a lot of implementation of like point and shoot. Can we get this done? And I see that coming for the cannabis industry. That wake up call of like, oh shit, we should just really. And the thing is, the pharma companies in the United States learned through that if you test that stuff earlier, you catch, and then you get to stop it before it gets into your supply chain.
Yep.
All the things you gain from that. Again, the learning that we will do still in this industry. We are a very young industry.
That's so wild that, you know, the United States was one of the countries that weren't doing these strict regulations.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, we're the number 1 country in the world who promotes medicines on advertisements consistently every year.
We make more drugs, but we also have more people die by far from pharmaceutical medications than anywhere else in the whole world. I can't quote the stats, but it's obviously debilitating to our culture.
Yeah.
So those things go hand in hand, dude. Like the loosey-goosey pump out drugs kind of attitude that we have here in the United States goes hand in hand with the big picture. And frankly, like why I do what I do so hard now. I want to see like a cannabis industry that is able to usurp. You know, we are the exit drug. Cannabis is the exit drug. But if we don't get our shit straight and start to operate like pharmaceutical and farming and food agro, we can never level up that way. No. Like, I don't want to become the big evils, but we have to apply the good habits.
Absolutely.
So that we can scale for like the sake of folks. Like we have to. We have to adopt better principles so that the medicine can reach more people. Because there's a huge subset that will never touch it unless it feels like a drug. That's why so many people start their path to cannabis through a gummy, because it's the thing that feels most like a nice controlled dosage thing instead of the joint that I don't know how hard I hit that thing and how strong it is. People are like, I'm going to take my gummy because it makes me feel safe.
Right.
And we have to like cue into that, right? Like, so I want more people to cue into that, but it means we have to like understand what What does that feel like to us as an industry?
Yeah, that's it's funny that people gravitate more towards edibles because when I was working in the ER in 2016, uh, that's when Las Vegas went online for recreational cannabis.
Oh, I want to hear some
And
stories, bro.
the the dumb shit that I would see. Well, first off, I felt bad for the elderly patients that would come in because they weren't being educated properly by the bud tender and they weren't telling them what dosages to start out with. So, they're like, oh yeah, I just ate one. I didn't feel anything for like an hour, so I just figured I'd eat two more. And then I didn't feel anything for another hour, so I just figured maybe I should eat a little bit more. And then all of a sudden they're calling the ambulances to come pick them up because they're tachycardic and they're like, I feel like I'm dying. I don't know what to
I'm having a
do.
heart attack. Yep.
I'm
We
super
laugh.
heavy.
We laugh. But damn it, it's not funny. It's not funny. Stop laughing. We're not going to
It's
laugh
not.
anymore.
No, but then you have the other subset of the population that thought that they could, and this is Vegas that gets the best of people, they thought that they could drink soda at the beginning of the morning, drink all day, be outside in the sun, have no water whatsoever, and then eat a gummy. And it's like,
Yeah.
bro, what
Abuse their
do you?
body, abuse their body, abuse their body, abuse their body, and then pow! Let's
Yeah,
use cannabis, the one thing that you should have started your damn day with and not finished it. Thank you very
exactly.
much. Yeah, it's the thing. And that miseducation has led us also to this, we're going to have a moment here where we all should be really conscientious about how we treat um the next phases again of our businesses, how we adopt better principles in 2024.
Hmm.
This could be a year for the cannabis industry to mature
Yes.
in light of all this rescheduling, descheduling conversations. No matter how much you want to bitch about one way versus the other way, descheduling is the only way, descheduling is the only way. But I would appreciate still a rescheduling, because what that allows the cannabis industry to do is focus on the principles that, again, will allow us to help the medicine.
Yes.
And if you want to follow that, the money, reach more people.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we are all in this for. And so we should all be saying, okay, how we can look at like process analytics. How can we measure stuff more and through our processes to catch mistakes, increase yields, make more money, make more consistent product that more people will learn to come to depend on. It's just, there's a moment here we're going to have, and either it's going to be in 2024, it's going to be in 2025, it's going to be one in the next few years. It might be stretched out over those 3 years, where this industry does a hell of a lot of growing up to look more like, I think, the cannabis industry of the future.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. I think with the number of conferences that begin to pop up more and more, you're going to start recognizing who's actually making change and who's staying the same. And the people that are going to stay the same will get left behind because they're not increasing their awareness of the practices that should be implemented into their business. That's just it. You have to grow. There's no other way around it. And if you want to keep pumping out consistent garbage, then guess what? The feedback is going to surface. The results are going to show through testing, just like with your system that you're working with at Orange Photonics. And, eventually all of these, I'm going to get into it, all of these inflation spikes of potency are going to they're going to get pushed aside because uh, that in itself is making our industry look terrible because everyone's
It's a
so
weakening of
focused
the
on,
foundation.
yeah, this is looking at the potency and saying it's a numbers game when there's so much more the plant has to offer for the consumer.
Yeah, it's such a multifaceted like issue that has been obfuscated in a number of ways. Like, if you look at the inflation game in data manipulation, if you look at just the THC race, I kind of look at those two things differently because they affect the industry differently.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the converted cannabinoids, THC, hemp versus cannabis, we are different. No, we're not. We're all the same. We have to figure this out, folks. We have to figure this out. And just because they have created this just shit box, like they have literally created a playground with a bunch of broken toys in it and said, go kids, play. And let's see if you can figure out how to fix all this shit before you play. Because if you play, you're all going to hurt yourselves. I see the seesaw that's not balanced appropriately. I see the spinny thing, right? I see as a mom, that's my analogy for all of this. They basically built us a playground, and we are the little kids because it's such a baby industry. We are the little kids. And it's taken us, we've already been beating ourselves up state by state in this playground. But now we have to fix the stuff so we can all play.
Right. And
crazy analogy, but sorry.
Just going off of that, just set down some ground rules for ourselves. I think that's what it is. It comes to, let's not treat this like a state of anarchy. Let's not treat it like the Wild West. Let's treat it like an actual business model that we should all be implementing and all get it in agreement with the same standards. So that way you don't have to go into the following year hurting and asking for more money from investors. I mean, that's what it boils down to, is like, yes, we need to wait for the Safe Banking Act to go through, or some version of it that allows for cannabis to start working with banks. But until that happens, we need to set some ground rules so that you're not consistently going into the red by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, it does come down to how we operate is on a lot of assumptions in cannabis. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of thing that we're doing, from Orange Photonics perspective through Light Lab. It's not about replacing that C of A test. That's not what it is about. It's about, okay, you're running a business here. And where are the moments that you should not count on a printed out C of A, for one? Mm-hmm. Where are the moments that if you just as an extractor, if you measured along the way, just like when they make drugs, they never not measure along the way. They make systems that are online measurement tools because it's such a part of how it goes all the time.
Right.
So when you start just going as an operator, where are the loss points in my business that I'm taking for granted? Mm-hmm. Then you can start looking at your competitors. You look to the left and you look to the right and you go, okay, every time you do your BHO run, this is your yield. And this is if you bought the exact same biomass, this is how you run it. But I've used data to figure out how to run it more efficiently, figure out how to run it for an hour less time. And then over the year, that makes me win where my competitor doesn't. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of stuff that cannabis industry has not really at scale cued into, that all of these things that we're doing are about retainment of cannabinoids. Mm-hmm. You start with a certain amount of cannabinoids, whether you turn it into a gummy. Flower is its own craft thing, and I believe in the craft market of flower, and you can't just do measurement of cannabinoids, and please, let's just get away from that.
Absolutely.
But for a huge part of our industry, especially the growing gummy segment, and it is, the more old people that come in, the more new it's never gonna go away.
Right.
And it will become a growing portion of the growing part of America that consumes. We have to think about it like every single cannabinoid. It's 5 milligrams of cannabinoids. And if we lose thousands of milligrams just by being wasteful on the front end, mm-hmm. then that's thousands of gummies that we're not making money off of. And that's the kind of shit that I tune people into all the time. I'm like, did you measure that spent biomass? Please, dear God, tell me you measure that ethanol covered butane covered, whatever it is. I know your lab won't take it. Measure it in a light lab, because if it's got 4%, 6%, God forbid, 8%, I've seen it. That is money. You are literally just throwing away the baby with the dirty bathwater. Bye, baby. It's like money. It's just so much money. Thousands of grams of cannabinoids every single year.
Yeah.
Just because you don't tune things in. And it's really just because, we're such a new industry that it's that tribal pulse. And I call it the tribal wizardry because I give it a lot of credit for what it is. It's like a little bit of magic, a lot of science. That's what a wizard is. But it's that tribal thing that it's been handed down over and over that has been the heartbeat of how we learn things. We hand it down. This is how you run that machine. This is how you do this. This is how you do that thing. But until we start going, here's a layer of some new stuff we can. How do I take all of what I know from who taught me this and now add some numbers? And maybe they'll teach me a lot. Maybe they won't teach me a lot, but they will teach you a lot. They will. And if you, instead of just looking at material or, looking at trichomes or stir, I have guys that say like, it's done because I know the way the consistency, but like decarb levels are measurable.
Yeah, no, and I, to, go off of that, I started out as a laboratory technician working on CO2 machines from Eden Labs, and
okay.
I used my basic understanding of chemistry and physics to learn and break down how the machine was operating and what bottlenecks it had as a solvent for CO2 on top of all of the variables that come into play when you're taking raw material and grinding it down to a certain millimeter length and then being able to pack that into a column and extract all your cannabinoids out. So, going based off of any solvent that you're going to be using, you're trying to pinpoint the exact pressure, temperature, time, grind size, and even the amount that you're putting into the column. It all varies, but if you don't come from a background that was involved with any sort of scientific method principles, then you're going to miss out significantly on how much you could actually produce that will inevitably be more profitable in the long run. So, this has been my passion project to bring forward a podcast that's starting to get the audience engaged and wanting to learn the science and start understanding that you have to learn that basic principle. You have to know some sort of biology, you need to know some sort of chemistry or physics, because that is essentially what is driving this market forward, are the people who are dedicating their time and their effort to making these scientific principles be understood at a base level. It doesn't have to be super out there where you're like, what the fuck? I'm lost. No. Like, you just have to understand that you can't throw money at a problem, especially one that's so complex.
Yeah, or like where, if you just, we call it democratized HPLC for a reason. Right? That's it. Like, that's the core of it. We want to democratize this thing that every MSO has $1.5 million lab in every single state. Trust me. 9 out of the top 10 also have light labs to go along with it, but they have the HPLCs and the chemists that are driving some of that baseline operational shit they have to do. And everybody working in this industry, because we are measured by 1 or 2 cannabinoids, that's like operationally what everything drives off of is THCA, Delta 9, CBD, other cannabinoids, hopefully. But it's like a measurement of potency, profile potency. And if you don't like get into like looking at that, then you're really like missing out for your business. And we just want to make it as easy as possible to do that. That's why Dylan Wilkes invented Light Lab.
Yeah, tell me more about Light Lab and Orange Photonics.
Yeah, it started about 7 years ago. He's a third generation super nerdy spectroscopist inventor. Let's just start there.
Okay.
I'm also an inventor. We have a bunch of super genius engineers on our team, so it's like a smart team. We're based in New Hampshire. But Light Lab came from Dylan Wilkes and his, kind of effort again to bring a tool to the cannabis industry, because he loved the plant as well, that would help solve some basic problems.
Right.
It started with a spectroscopy tool.
Okay.
Realized when they were super deep in, when he and our president and his partner Stephanie McCardle were pretty deep in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, near infrared is not going to work alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not going to, it'll solve some of the problems, but it's not going to get down to the nitty gritty of what the heart of what this industry needs at the levels that it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did a lot of like digging deep, right? This is a team that has definitely done a lot of loss through, investing and keeping this company tight. But developed Light Lab, and, by about the time I joined a few years ago, we had about 500 instruments or so in the field. And those instruments are, again, it's a portable HPLC. So that's high performance liquid chromatography machine. And chromatography is the technology that a lab would use to separate and measure cannabinoids, right? We put it into what a lot of people call the orange box. It's a Pelican case. It's an orange Pelican case.
Yep.
I get shouted like, I know it's in that orange box, but I love it. I love it so much. I have a few of them sitting next to me, so you see me keep looking over next to me. But it contains not only the HPLC, but basically the chemist inside of the box. Right. And that's really the key. Anybody could make an HPLC in a box. Like nobody's going to do what this team did to make it think the way it thinks, to make it interpret the temperature of the room thousands of times every single minute, and use that in the algorithm to control all of the flow, all of the interpretation of that data, because it means a difference if it's 55 degrees or if it's 85 degrees in the field. That's why you can't take Shimadzu or Agilent's HPLC out into the field. It ain't going to work because it needs a very tight range of operation temperature, where Light Lab is meant to be taken where the problem is. It often sits in like a lab somewhere still,
right? Because
its core is like, also it works robustly and gives you the same answers no matter where you are.
Yeah.
But really the key is whoever you are that's running it. Like you do not need to have like any chemistry background. None. If you have some, you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to be like, damn, this thing is a real HPLC. All right. But it's not something that like you need to know what you're doing. That's the point. It's like a tool that you roll up to, and it helps you get through the process. It helps you in less than 20 minutes have cannabinoid analysis. And that's like a miracle.
That is.
By a typical HPLC takes like an hour just to make it happy. But Light Lab is ready to go in 9 minutes, and 12 minutes later you have sample results. So give me about 21 minutes, and pretty much anything that you have, whether it's a gummy or a beverage or a baby plant or pounds and pounds of bud or biomass that's been soaked with supercritical CO2 or ethanol, and you need to understand if you're out of your following extraction rate zone. Like that's the shit. That's it. No matter what, you throw it at Light Lab, and it's not where you have to like interpret a bunch of method stuff, right? That's the kind of thing. You don't need to be the scientist that's reading the papers that I can barely swallow down, and I am that scientist. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do all the columns. I don't want to do all the solvents. I don't want to adjust all my rates. I don't want to do all that.
Right.
Light Lab is designed so that you don't have to do all that. We validated about 40 methods baked onto the box.
Amazing.
So that means like you walk up and you go, I have plant. You push plant. And it walks you through the process of like, is it a baby plant? Is it, it gets you through the process. If it's an edible, it says like, okay, do you have a pectin-based gummy? Or is it, a chocolate? Or is it a nano-emulsified shot? It has all these options. And then it tells you, okay, this is what you do. You take this much of solvent A, this much of solvent B,
Yes.
this much of the sample, combine it all in the little vial.
Mm-hmm.
And the vial gets weighed, obviously, by a scale. And then that scale feeds to Light Lab, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you add solvent, you shake it. And then that magical mix, which is essentially extracted cannabinoids at that point, gets shot into Light Lab. And Light Lab takes it from there.
Yes.
Right? Light Lab does the chromatography from there. And again, 8 minutes later, you get this. Here's the amount of 20 cannabinoids that you have in the sample.
And what's amazing about your technology at Light Lab is that after it's done, it uploads to the email so you can interpret your data in real time. And that was what was amazing when I saw that. I mean, not only is it portable, not only can you do things step by step with no background in science at all, but the fact that you can get your data instantly and be able to say, all right, now I need to make this hard decision about if I'm going to continue with the process that I've been running my extracted material with, or give it a thumbs up, or even test it one step further to validate those results. And that's where people get lost, is that it's not a one-time fix. You have to consistently track and record your data. Record the biggest one right there, because you can just be like, oh, that was great. Cool. Well, that's in the back of my
Snapshot,
head.
yeah. Like
Yeah. No, I didn't write anything down. I didn't put this in a spreadsheet.
You're hitting it, man. That's exactly what we got to do is we got to start recording things. It's called traceability. It's a big word.
Yep.
We have to adopt it, like just making records. And a lot of like cannabis cultivators are pretty good at that because they got metric up their ass.
Yep.
Right. Like, but it's just the idea that if you do that and then you start back it up a little bit with that data, right? You go like that, you can learn like with a 30,000 foot perspective from your process. And you go, okay, whether it's 10 harvests in a row and you're measuring at 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, and 10 weeks. And you figure out, oh, this is how that plant actually was behaving. What did I do differently? How did I feed it? What you can measure and learn versus just at the end go, oh, wow, that was a good one. That was a good harvest. I wonder what. And that's what we do. And I'm not trying to minimize it, but there is so much more. And we have teams that are doing it. Like they have now those are our 9 weekers and those are our 10 weekers. Oh, we got all these new genetics. Where do each genetics belong?
Right.
Because if we treat the 9 weekers like they're the 10 weekers like they're 9 weekers, then we don't give them the potential to get to the 32% that they're going to be, that the market wants. But if our business just needs to be keyed in to that. And it's only data that's going to, help us do that. Right. And so, it is. It's like that learning, dude, like you're saying about how do we just consistently measure things? And through extraction is the easiest one. Like we have so many teams now that like they can't run any of their extraction processes without fundamentally having this data, because they know their C of A says 18%. No, let's be generous. Let's be less generous. The C of A says 12%. That's a reality, right? Oh, I got this biomass and it says 12%.
Right.
They are expecting X yield in X yield weight and X yield percentage based on that. And that's like a relationship that you have. And whether you trust this guy versus you don't trust this guy, that may be that's a scale of how that feels.
Yes.
But no matter what, if you just go, okay, we're going to test this on Light Lab. That's it. And we have so many people. That's it. They don't even go out to see the biomass. That's it. You just test it with Light Lab. And then we are all on the same page. about where we start, what the expectations should be, even if it's just for my own team. I know that, like, oh shit, that's 15%. Nice. No, that's actually only 8%.
Right.
No matter what we wanted it to be, it's only 8%. So let's expect X.
Yes.
And fundamentally, let's make sure as we're going through our process, if we believe it's a 5-hour run that needs to get us there, that we anticipate where we might be at 4 hours.
Yep.
Because we might not want to run to 5 hours, Dorian, because that 5th hour might not be worth it.
Exactly.
And that's those business decisions that you start applying the science and the statistics to, do math. And if we're running the same stuff all the time and we're running as a business, we're trying to like make the margins add up to bigger wins, unless we're doing that kind of stuff, we're just shooting in the dark. Pew, 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 pew. That was good. Oh, that was good. That was good. That was all right. That sucked. Why? I don't know. But if you start going, that's going to suck, so I'm going to limit that run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cut it off. That last 45 minutes gets me 2 extra %. But it costs me a lot to keep that shit running.
Yeah.
It would be better if I stopped the run and started a new one.
Yeah.
Because I have biomass coming out my ass.
And the other thing, based on that, is there ever going to be the capability, or does it have the capability now to test for pesticides or heavy metals?
Yeah, not on Light Lab now.
Okay.
Right? Pesticides, it can see pesticides, but not like if you tested pesticides on Light Lab,
Mm-hmm.
you'd test them, you'd see them,
Mm-hmm.
but not in the levels that they are. That's why we use LCMS.
Okay.
Usually to test pesticides, right? We use that MS level of detection goes lower, and it's like a trigger detection, like it sees things, ping, we see it. That's mass spectroscopy. And there, I think Orange Photonics is focused on like serving all the needs of the cannabis industry. So heavy metals is usually done by AA or ICP, like it's done by different technologies as well. And there are some or XRF is a technology that can see heavy metals, and it's like a portable technology. But again, the cannabis industry, for the most part, has not really adopted a in-house, because those technologies are really, really hard and really expensive, even as an in-house method, right?
Right.
The other one is essentially when you're looking for mold, right? And there is like PCR, microbes, there is in-house methods for that can run like $50K that are good. That's good shit to do, especially if you live in certain parts of the country where you're always going to be battling that kind of problem. Like maybe you adopt, again, I am all for science. Even the shitty little spectroscopy based, forgive me that I just said that first word about them, but like even the little handheld tools, God love them. No, don't spend your money on them. But if you have one, use it.
Right.
Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, because I mean, any application, I don't want you to chase really shitty data either. Don't make huge decisions on it. But let's do it, cannabis industry. Let's do the science thing, because the science is directly related to money and win. And the folks that embrace it will be the folks that rise to the top.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. And talk to me more about how cannabis or alternative medicines in general have changed your life.
Again, right from day one, it's always been a way for me to find reflection and perspective, right? Like I always have been a hustler. I was the kid all through college, up early, 7 a.m. classes, get out, go straight to my job, get out, do work until 2 a.m., get up, 7 a.m., rinse and repeat for 5 straight years. Like that's who I was. And it was only because I was taking rips at every single break, honestly, I was going home and taking a couple of bong rips before I got started with my job, that I was able to just say, hell yeah, it's worth it. And then I executed that. I did. I executed that.
Right.
Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me any money. And I didn't come out with a bunch of student loan debt because I worked my ass off to pay for my tuition every semester. I also went to one of the cheapest public universities in the country, which demonstrates the wisdom of the choice of where you go. Like, it wasn't known for bioengineering. It wasn't known for, but it became known for bioengineering 3 years after I graduated. So I still get the credit for that choice. Go figure. But it was cheap. And so I came out with no debt and a great education.
Yes.
Huge win for me. But I'm forgetting. Yeah, I mean, it's always been like such an important, like, just part of who I am. People that like knew me from my old life, the pharma space and stuff, they're like, oh, I get it now. I get you now, Jill. That totally makes sense. Like when they see me on LinkedIn and stuff, they're like, oh, fucking perfect sense. Like, yeah, everybody. And it was, I saw Light Lab on LinkedIn. I saw like a picture of it or something, and I called the people that own Orange Photonics.
Right.
And I said, I have to be part of this. That was it. And like 3 weeks later, I was part of Orange Photonics.
Wow.
And I like literally the blood started coming out orange in my veins immediately. Like, it's true. Like, it's part of me too, obviously. This company, I'm part owner in the company as well. And it's really important to me. Our success is fundamental to like my family's success. Our success is fundamental to the cannabis industry success. I think it is. I don't separate. Again, that's lofty, but that's no bullshit, because I know that it's when the FDA and Customs and Border Protection and all of the international cannabis control and state-based cannabis control bodies are formalizing the easiest solution. In other industries, they do that the same exact way. And then those industries get adopted those technologies get adopted within the industries,
right?
Or the as similar technologies, so that we could say, hey, that's how you measure us. We're going to make sure we do that job that way. Then we measure ourselves that way, so that when you say ping, we could say pang with the same thing, right? Like, that's always been my goal, dude. So when you see me out there and you see me like working with the FDA, you see me working with those folks, it's because if they are going to measure us by something, they should measure us by something that we can all afford to buy. And everyone can get into a light lab. If you can afford the next extraction package or pre-roller or XYZ, and you're not running an HPLC in-house, you are not looking at your 5-year plan. Because this is part of the future of cannabis, is measuring cannabinoids in-house. You have to do it.
Right.
And so it's like, that's why I do what I do with those groups. It's because we need to all be on a platform.
Yes.
And that platform, again, to go back, I'm going to tout Light Lab all day long. But the data is what the data is. And I'm happy anybody who wants to hit me up on LinkedIn or hit me up on my email, I'll send them this data. And it shows that if, you take a Light Lab and you throw the same sample at a Light Lab over and over again, right? Versus an HPLC, the Light Lab wins by far. Reproducibility is a big, big thing. And that's what we want, is we want a tool that when it's applied by anyone, you get the right same answers.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, and that's what we don't have in the cannabis industry right now. That's why we have lab shopping. That's why we have data manipulation. That's why we have these issues that that are so huge, and we all know about it. They get used to some company. Everybody uses it to their benefit or their detriment.
Yeah.
But that is the fundamental shift we're trying to drive here.
The consistency, the reliability.
Yeah, and like the ability for anyone to employ that, kind of technology without having to find and keep a chemist that costs $70,000 a year. That's the real kicker. Like, we can't get into that because the gap from where we are in the cannabis space to where we're going to have to be like a FDA controlled space, which is where we're headed, folks. Hello.
Yeah.
No matter if you like rescheduling, like, they're going to have a role in this conversation. They already did. Anybody wake up to a couple weeks ago? Like, we have to talk about this. So
Right.
if we're gonna live in that space, then it's time. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
time.
it's time to make the data and science accessible to people to start analyzing. And I see a lot more groups on LinkedIn every week that are compiling data now, and especially with your talk, how you already, expose data manipulation happening in the industry and the inflation of test results. It's a big elephant in the room that needs to be talked about, and it can't be swept under the rug anymore because that is what people are focusing on when they buy products.
For sure. And it has, I mean, if you go to my, again, if you go to my LinkedIn page or the Orange Photonics YouTube page, there's a recording, not the one that I gave at MJ Biz. They don't let you record that, but I did
Mm-hmm.
one a couple days re-recording, so to speak, of that presentation. So if you want to check it out, guys, go to Orange Photonics YouTube page or my LinkedIn page for that information, Jill Carreiro LinkedIn page. But that presentation, I'm really thankful to all the scientists, and I wouldn't dare try to start quoting all of their names. There are 6 or 7 amazing scientists that contributed to that data that are a lot more smart than I am. But it does, like, it points to the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is undoubtedly scientifically, forensically proven a real issue across the United States, to the point where we don't have, in some states, a lab that's actually working honestly. And how we manipulate that data, that is a human choice. It's not an accident, and we can also, really determine and converge upon the reasons why that happens, whether it's retesting
Right.
or manipulation of actually the test results themselves. But most importantly, Dorian, it's like the implications of that.
Yeah.
Why that matters. Because most people are like, who cares? If everything's getting inflated, everything's getting inflated. No.
No.
No,
No.
no, 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 no,
It's
no,
a
no.
zero-sum game at that point. Come on.
Hell, that's God. You just hit it right on the head. This is a zero-sum game if we continue. And frankly, it ain't going to continue because all eyes are on it. And now we have these crazy world AI chat GPT capabilities to fetch out this shit without even, you need so much less effort to point at a data set and go, what's happening there?
Yep.
Especially if you know what to look for. And we
Exactly.
know what to look for because of, again, the efforts of Jeff Ross and Josh Khan and Rouge Wisher and Josh Whiter and Jim McRae. And I'm trying to think of everybody, but again, I just missed off a few people. Keegan Muscate. We have to do a better job. All those folks figured out of shifting the laboratory system here in the United States as well to focus on truth in data and come back from these, what you see in that presentation I gave is, very clear across the nation places or shifts where you will not see labs hand back data or flower tests that are below 20% or below 30%. And that's because that flower won't sell on that wholesale market. And so there are just natural or unnatural kind of moments where, you just see these lumps in the data set apply. And if we can figure out how to use, kind of a full circle solution, like, it's auditing, guys. That's what it comes down to. Like, it's going to come back to that. And some states are already doing it. It's going to the dispensary.
Yep.
And so OCM in Washington does it. DCC in California does it. They're just starting to do it. Mind you, they got a bunch of light labs, so thank you very much. You're welcome. They're going to the dispensaries. And if you like this idea, which you should like this idea, if you're a cannabis consumer, you are getting ripped off. Your gas is getting watered down 20%. That's how it is as a cannabis consumer. The data shows it across the nation. It's like if you went to mobile and as a cannabis consumer said, I want the 20% watered down version, please. I'm going to pay you the same amount. That's what's happening. So like, let's do something about it. OCM and Department of Cannabis Control, they started to do something about it. If you like that idea, reach out to your local cannabis control department and say, do something about it. Go to our dispensary and start checking the label against what the package actually contains. There are people that do it uniquely and individually, like as independent. We have the Institute of Cannabis Science here in Boston. They do a lot of work around that. That's like all about figuring out the truth and potency claims on the label. And it really is unremarkable or remarkable, but you are not going to get what you're paying for.
Because if we don't get it together, then there's going to be a bigger company that comes in that has regulations already that they abide by through pharmaceutical or nutraceutical and have to meet certain requirements to pump out consistent product.
Yeah. I mean, we got to evolve. We got to evolve, Dorian. That's what it comes down to. It's not that painful either. Folks that get it, once they get it, they're like, damn, how did I ever live without this thing? That's the thing. It's a step forward. So we're a nice team to work with too. So that's a big thing too. We do work with regulators and the FDA, but 3/4 of the 1,000 teams using Light Lab out there are commercial operators. They're hemp farmers. They're people that are growing weed and making great products from it. We love them so much, right? Like, man, Good Day Farm, Rubicon, Falcon. I could go on and on and on about the teams that are using Light Lab. Cape Ann Cannabis, Theory Wellness here in Massachusetts and Maine. Like, Theory Wellness is such a cool example. They are a team that is so keyed into like data and how to use it to like just excel slowly and like, and they've just tuned Light Lab into the same thing across their different operations. And that's when we love it, right? Is when we have like a small 3 or 4 multi-state operator. Like they're still operating like pretty tight little operations, but then they like key into how to use that data between the states and just like they're future readying. They're thinking way bigger. They're thinking, how do we make our team and our company really solid? And so yeah, it's it is a big picture thing. We're moving the whole tide. It's a rising tide lifts all ships moment. And Orange Photonics is definitely, I think, a big part of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love everything that we touched on in this conversation. I think it's going to be super beneficial for the audience to hear the raw and unfiltered discussions that need to be had. And that's why I want to continue pursuing this project, because I need more brilliant people who are changing how we view alternative medicine. I mean, the fact that the Light Labs can now test fungi, that's a huge step, right? Because now we're getting into the psychedelic new renaissance that's getting revived. And that's going to be part of the conversation as well, because there's already tons of teams that were in cannabis that are now shifting their direction towards this industry. So I definitely want to.
So powerful for plant medicine overall as well. There aren't 30 plus federal funded studies on cannabis, but there are for psychedelic mushrooms. And that says something. And it's because of the relationship or the power of that specific plant set for the veterans and the American relationship to our veterans and our honor of our veterans, that it's been gaslit in the right way, right? Like it's been like, yes, and we got to like align ourselves to that, support that relationship. But I will tell you, when it comes to potency in mushrooms, that implication is huge, right? Like it's orders of magnitude. When you're talking about one handful of caps versus a difference, the next could be 100-fold difference in the potency. Swallow that down. Imagine if you went to buy 20% flour and it was 2% or 200%. Or you can't get 200%, but that's the reality in mushrooms. Very much the reality. So yeah, it's a big, dude, it's a big. And yeah, Light Lab PSY is what we call it. We also have Light Lab PSY plus Canna, which is like a combined machine that can do both. Yeah, that's it. Like, that's what we're trying to do here. And we have a lot of cool shit in the engineering pipeline, stuff for terpenes, stuff for this. But it was the psychedelics question. We started about 8 months ago answering for ourselves. How big of a risk were consumers at if they started ordering shit in Colorado, Oregon, places in Massachusetts? And it became very clear to us that, oh boy, we got to answer this problem as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And so we have this unit that can test 6 tryptamines. We're adding more every day, just like we do with cannabinoids on Light Lab. And it blows my mind. I look back to the days where I just, with a handful, and like, I would never do that again. I would never even take a microdose, because I test one microdose and the next identical looking tablet or capsule, and one is 6 or 7 times as strong as the other. So could you imagine if you took 6 microdoses?
Yeah.
Because that's the reality. You're like, I could take that microdose because it's 100 milligrams of weighed product. That doesn't mean you got to measure your psilocybin and your psilocin. And your baeosystems, norbaeosystems, all these other things that really matter, probably even more than those. But conversation for another day. Can I drop some names? That I think you should talk to? Geniuses that are all about plant medicine, that are futuring what we do, the conversations that we're having. Tune into these people, everyone. Miyabi Shields, Riley Kirk, Stephen Philpott, Cody Peterson, Jeff Rawson. I'm trying to think of some of the other people that are. I mean, that's a short list. Really quickly off the top of my head. All people that are doing like really cool science stuff that you got to tune into.
So I actually talked with Dr. Cody Peterson last week, and I had a conversation with Riley Kirk in January.
Awesome genius people. I mean, and people that like give themselves to like the plant and what we're doing here. And personally, I could tell you, like, legitimately, those people are good humans. Every one of those people that I just mentioned are like good humans that maybe we came from outside, or we still are halfway outside, but their heart is all with the plant and what it's going to do for the future, and our children and our children's children and all of society that is here now. So I'm glad you're hooked up with those people, and happy to drop more names and make more connections for you, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. I'm open to talking to anyone and everyone. So, you know, I want to close out with some personal questions, just so that we connect with you and the audience, showing that you're human, because you're super human.
I'm a human, I promise. I cry and I scream at my kids, and I'm struggling because I didn't buy enough Christmas presents yet. And what else can I say? Yeah, for sure.
So, first question: what's your favorite music?
Anything but country.
Anything but country.
Yeah, I like reggae. Led Zeppelin's my favorite band.
Reggae? Who specifically in reggae?
Well, I would be remiss to probably say, I mean, Slightly Stupid is definitely one of my.
Oh, Slightly Stupid.
Yeah, my modern favorites. But there are definitely some old school and very traditional reggae artists that I love as well.
For sure. What's your favorite food after smoking?
Oreos, probably. I'm kind of addicted to Oreos. And I said this in another conversation, but I am not supporting Oreos. I'm supporting the Whole Foods brand of Oreos.
Yeah.
Because they are far superior. If you're an Oreos fan, go on Amazon. You can get the Whole Foods Oreos. They're like the Oreos from the 80s. You're laughing at me. This is the best takeaway your audience is going to have from this entire fucking conversation. They're going to be like, they are legitimately like, I'm serious. Anybody who's listening to this, go. And if you like Oreos, go on Amazon right now and buy the 365 version of Oreos. And,
I'm going to go buy some today.
And then you comment back on this podcast to Dorian and say, she was fucking right. They're so good. I can't even like eat a normal Oreo because I'm like, oh, they've ruined the. Yeah, trust me. You'll see. I'm telling
you. What's your favorite hobby?
A lot of my hobbies are associated with my children, right? Like, so they do, like, I had a lot of sports in my life because of them. You know, I'm a coach. Oh my God, I'm a coach for soccer because of them. But I am pretty artistic. I like to draw, and I like to, like, not journal in the way most people think, like write your day down journal, more plan my day down journal. Like, I do a lot of like, working in journals to just write down what's coming. I'm like strangely analog because I like to write with a pen. And most people make fun of me when they see the shit I carry around to just keep my life sorted, but it's mental clarity for me, and I enjoy it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just drawing and writing with a pen, and I like art and stuff like that. But I got 4 dogs, and I got a lot of animals too, so I like animals. Yeah, my dog is crying at me right now, so I'm like, all right, gotta get baby out. And the last question, advice for someone looking to get into a STEM field. Become an engineer. I give this advice all the time. Again, I go to STEM classes at my kids' schools and stuff like that. Just become an engineer. Like, I don't do engineering work, but having like an engineering degree, it's lofty. Like, I had to take Calc 2 3 times, you guys, and I'm pretty fucking smart. Like, I had to work at it. You got to work at that. But once you have that in your pocket, if you're interested in all, and like doing this kind of thing with your life, it's a license. I'm sorry. It's like a license to take that next step forward no matter what. So, like, put in the work. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Like, in higher education and giving your money to the man and all that shit, it kind of sucks. But like, you gotta get that learning, and that learning gets you that license to go and kick ass, even if engineering part of it is like a tiny little part of it. But I do think the skills that you learn as an engineer, generally the engineering problem solving process, it is really important to business generally. Like, to work in a field like mine, I'm not engineering day to day, but I use the engineering process all the time. It reflects to what we do and how we shape this company and business and next steps, what we do. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be as good at, and I'm a VP of sales. Right. But if I didn't, I would never have gotten to where I am now if I didn't do that. And I always have, you have to be super nerdy. All the things that I've always done, I had to have all the science background. But I never, for almost ever, have I worked as a quote unquote real engineer. So I would say, if you're wanting to get involved in the field, just understand there's a lot of flexibility, but you got to have some of that foundational, stuff. And if you're already there, if you're already that adult, and you maybe don't have that background, start higher than you think in the cannabis industry. We need more than bud tenders, and you have skill sets that maybe the cannabis industry doesn't know are applicable or connected, and you might have to do the extra work to show how valuable they are, or Absolutely. To figure it out, right? Like you said, like, you got to figure out how it works. But then, like, shit, I have all this stuff that the cannabis industry needs. The people that have come in and figure out that had all the security background, right, from other industries, they didn't start in the cannabis industry. And so there's a lot in the engineering realm and all the stuff that I said around process analytics and other spaces, like in other industries. Come on, my old pharma friends, all those people that are doing that kind of shit, that are saying, like, how do I make this big old machine work better year over year to save my company money? That's what we need in cannabis too. So we welcome The cannabis industry is, I think that's the cool thing about it too. It's open and growing, and the people here are, for the most part, like ready to learn.
Yeah, no, we need more thinkers, we need more doers, we need more builders, and most importantly, just bring the passion.
And we need to empower the people that are also have been here thinking and doing and building and not giving their cred. Every legacy farmer, every extractor that's been running systems in his basement forever and ever, they deserve the opportunity to win as well. And again, that's that democratization part, Dorian. Like, we got to make it so that those guys can like edge it out. So
absolutely, I agree
appreciate
with everything.
You so much. I appreciate this conversation.
This was very fun. Thank you for your time, Jill, and I cannot wait for everyone to listen to this and future conversations that I have with you, because this is not the last one.
No, definitely not. You want to get into stream some point, let me know. But take care of yourself today, Dorian, and Merry Christmas.
You as well. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye, buddy.
Bye-bye.
I had such a blast shooting that episode with Jill Carreiro from Orange Photonics and Light Labs. It was such a breath of fresh air to meet someone in person that I've connected with over LinkedIn, and MJ BizCon was definitely one to remember for 2023. As we close out the year, I just want to say thank you for everyone who's tuned in since the beginning of my journey in September, and I'm looking forward to connecting with many more talented people in the alternative medicine industry. For now, stay tuned. Please like, subscribe, rate the podcast on Spotify and YouTube. Again, thank you for your support. Don't stop blabbing.